Hello, everyone. My name is Maury Giles with Heart+Mind Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us today on this another of our Heart and Mind Connection series roundtable sessions that we've been doing over the last 4 years. Those of you who might be new joining us for the first time, these sessions are meant to be able to inspire better thinking, to be able to get us to learn how to better connect with each other, and whether that's in your personal, professional, or organization, community level. And today we have a special treat that I think almost more than anything we've ever done is going to give some very practical guidance on a very significant issue that we're all facing every day. I was just with my in-laws and my brother-in-law and his wife and my wife over at Utah Lake playing games and having dinner the other night in a nice, enjoyable moment, until somebody brought up Trump and somebody brought up Biden. And then it was like, okay, let's just maybe change the topic for a moment. And that's what we want to try to talk about today is, as a country, as a people, how do we do more to be able to bring us closer together, to connect, treat each other with dignity, and really, as Carrie Conko from the State Policy Network will share today, undivide us. Because in reality, what we know is that we have far more in common than we have that separates us. But that's not the way life is playing out. That's not the way our social media and other tools are designed in terms of working with us or working against us. And so today, I think you're going to have some very practical guidance on things that will make a difference in the way you approach your life and how you interact with each other. I'd strongly recommend you take some notes, engage in the conversation, and let's jump right in. Before I introduce our guests, I want to walk you through and set up the problem by sharing a few data points that won't be surprising. Those of you that have joined us a lot in the past will be familiar with some of these, but this is fresh data as of just within a week to 2 weeks. You can see, not surprising, that there's not a lot of confidence in the direction of the country. There's 70% of people who say, you know what, I think we're on the wrong track. But when you dig deeper in there, here's some things that are concerning. Think about this. 4 out of 10 people say, I don't feel like I have a place in society. It's a pretty consistent number that's reached as high at the end of last year as almost 1 out of 2, 49%, but staying consistently now post-COVID at this 40% level. If you dive deeper even with that, 6 out of 10 are saying that they don't feel connected to society. That purple bar is telling you the percentage to say, you know what, I feel connected when it comes to my society and community around me. But 37% say, no, I don't, I feel isolated. And that's another almost third who don't know. And so you've got 6 out of 10 saying, I don't feel connected to this society, this amazing experiment of a democratic republic that's brought about so much good in the world. We're lacking that sense of connection. More than 8 out of 10 see us, as you can see, that continuing to grow going toward the end of this year, of getting more divided. I think if you look at that, at society and the way the news reports and everything you see, you wouldn't be surprised to see that that's what people are thinking. When we actually ask some specific questions now about common ground, you can see that the difficulty there, it's not all end all be all, everything's tanking and out the waste with no hope of possibility, but certainly that's high. You can see that half of Americans say that there's people that are close to them in their life, right, really have difficulty finding anything we can agree on. So that's a pretty high bar to agree to, that I can't find anything that I agree with. You can see just under half say that I find today that I cannot have a productive and meaningful conversation with someone who belongs to the other political party. That's, again, a high bar of saying, like, well, I guess you could say a low bar of like just having a conversation, let alone finding common ground. Half of Americans agreeing that that's difficult for them. With Republicans, we say this question. Now think about this. I do not have any core beliefs or values in common with someone who's a Democrat. 42% of Republicans today saying, yep, I don't have anything in common. Democrats saying that of Republicans, 48%. So you can see this foundational play of saying we think that we disagree with each other. We look at the election moving ahead. You can see that this one, I think, is really interesting, that you see equally Republicans and Democrats saying that this is going to be one of the most important moments in U.S. history next year on the election. But yet they're mixed feelings about who the candidate is and basically whether or not whoever wins is going to be productive for society. But when you ask them, when you ask them and go through that, that demonstrates moving ahead, that we're facing an issue where people are concerned. They're wondering how they can have conversations. They're asking themselves, what does it mean? How do I better connect? And can I even connect? So today we have with us Carrie Conko from the State Policy Network. We have Riaz Patel, an executive producer and director with ConnectEffect. And we also have Tami Pyfer with Unite, and also the co-creator of the Dignity Index. Now, I want to start first with you, Carrie. And I would tell everyone in our session today that these topics we're going to go through, they're very important and effective in the sense of the actionability of this. You've heard about this issue. It's not something that's brand new, but what we're doing today is to try to bring to you things we've found that can be practically applied as to how do you do this. Now, Carrie, I know for the last year, good to see you again. Thank you for being here. For the last year, you've been passionately working on something that's about to come out. I want to show that trailer, but first, well, actually, we'll go right to the trailer and we'll show that.
Yeah, sure. Let's go to the trailer and then I'll talk a little bit about the movie.
Perfect. So there's a film that's coming out, folks, that is just, I'm just so excited to be able to share this and this release of this trailer, and we appreciate the ability to be able to do this today. So in this, what you're going to see, and hold on one second as I flip this over. You're going to see as we go through this that this is a trailer of a film that goes through and is called Undivide Us, and it establishes for us what this whole data point that I was just sharing with you, walking through in this. So let's go right to that.
In the media.
Just how bad is the GOP?
You called it two Americas that are divided.
How do civil wars get started, and how close do you think is the United States?
These screens that are in our homes and in our pockets, they put forth this story about America, that we're on the edge of civil war, that we can't get along, and the danger is that we might start to believe that.
Perhaps if we created the opportunity for folks to come together, giving them an opportunity to talk and explore ideas on, controversial issues.
Could you really get regular people from all kinds of different lives, really put them together and get them talking about hard stuff? Like, is that doable?
I think we should try.
We've got just a remarkable opportunity to kind of create something special that nobody's ever done before. We'll pick an issue. We know there's dozens of controversial issues, and then we'll go out and find people who are leaning one direction, and we'll find folks who are leaning the other direction.
Leaning Democratic.
I'm independent. I'm a moderate Republican. Left of liberal, by good amount.
How deep does it go? Does the average person feel that anger all the time? Or is it the political elites who profit from anger and division? Are they the ones who are the problem?
Well, Ben, I'm going to be bringing in some regular people and asking about some tough issues, and you're going to be there at the table with them.
If we don't get regular citizens talking again, disagreeing, and doing it respectfully, doing it way better than Washington does, it seems like there's a lot at stake if we don't figure that out.
We're going to jump in together, my friend.
Okay, Carrie.
Okay, great.
Why this? Why now? And what's the
Why
goal?
this? Why now? That's thank you, Maury. I so appreciate getting the opportunity to be part of this panel. You guys started these programs during COVID, and they were so instrumental to helping me sort of unravel as a marketing and communications person what was going on in the world around us. So I'm glad to see these continue. I just shared a link in the chat screen with everybody, so you can visit our website when you get a chance, after the panel, of course. You want to hear what our folks are talking about. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why I got involved with Undivide Us, why I think it's important now, and how you can get engaged. And it starts first with a personal story. Probably like a lot of you, a lot of parents, during COVID, my sister-in-law, Andrea, and my brother, John, in New Jersey were just incredibly frustrated with how things were going in their school system. They had 3 beautiful daughters, and they saw, like many of us, the learning loss issues, the psychological stress their daughters were going through, and they wanted to do something about it. And, as somebody who works in public policy, I said, well, get involved. Go out, go have a conversation, start, stop complaining and start doing something. So they started attending school and school board meetings to speak up. And, at that point, tensions were pretty high in their community. And Andrea, actually, as one of the mothers, became a voice of reason. When a lot of people were shouting at each other, she was one of those people that said, look, we need to have, rational, civil, conversations about this if we're going to get anywhere. So she was often the one sort of channeling that frustration into productive conversation. In 2021, Andrea and some of the other parents ran for school board in their district. And that's when things started to get really ugly for her. Her opposition to her decided they wanted to silence her. They looked for anything they could do to make her stop, going as far as even going through my parents' Facebook accounts and sharing their posts. And I'm sure that many of us would not want anybody digging through our parents' Facebook accounts, let alone our in-laws. But, their attempt to silence her just continued after she won her election. So two of the parents who were part of her slate won. And they political opponents basically went from there, and they just started setting up barriers to her doing her job. And doing what she was elected to do, which was represent, her community. They didn't really see her as someone to work with. They saw her as someone to work against. I'd like to say that she persevered, but she didn't. Ultimately, she threw up her hands. And this summer, she, my brother, they pulled their girls out of the schools in New Jersey, and they booked on down to Charleston, South Carolina. And that was, I think, one of the hardest calls. My mom is not well health-wise, and she called me the day they went to get on the ferry and take off south. And it was really hard. The guy who harassed my parents ended up getting appointed to her vacancy. So when that toxic politics comes for your family, or came for my family, I needed to do something about it. And the big thing I noticed, in our work, right, is the problem is not polarization, right? We're going to talk about polarization today. It's not polarization. Our system of government was designed by the founders to accommodate different points of view. That was the beautiful, that was the American experiment, right? That we were going to have different opinions, we were going to have different lifestyles, and even different policies. And at the end of the day, polarization in itself is a good. And historically, America has weathered the periods of extreme polarization. Most of us worry about the most notorious example of it, and that's the antebellum period leading up to the Civil War. However, if you're a student of history, in the 19th century, the Gilded Age was, tensions between labor and business, rural and urban. We know that following the Civil War itself, there were divides about how to rebuild the South and how to integrate freed slaves. Even our split with England was contentious, right? There were patriots and there were, royalists and loyalists. And then some of us are old enough even to remember, I don't remember the 60s, but I remember the 70s, right? The 60s, it was the time of the Vietnam War, civil rights, Watergate, the energy crisis. I remember, watching television with my parents and the battles then. So our country has a history of political conflict, right? Like, we have a system of self-governance and federalism, frankly, that has always been sort of that pressure release valve, right? My family, they were fed up with New Jersey. They went to South Carolina because they felt that was going to be a better opportunity. So, toxic polarization, however, that's the thing that we're talking about in this film, is where the extremes on both sides seek to divide and dehumanize. And that's bad, right? When we start to see people we disagree with as un-American, unworthy of our compassion or understanding, that leads to really dark places. And if we rely upon politics and that toxic polarization to develop solutions, especially, you know, what we see in Washington, where politics, you know, seems to be these days just more about choosing sides than solving problems, that pressure valve will continue to, you know, that will tighten and the pressure will build. So, you know, I have, you know, in doing this film, we went to 3 different cities. We did 6 focus groups, and, you know, it reminded me, right, that our country's traditional motto is E pluribus unum, which is out of many one. It speaks to that unity and integration of the states into one nation. And we see those, you know, we go to different cities. We were at Pittsburgh, Phoenix, Atlanta. You see different identities, you see different cultures, you see different styles of government. And we have to remind ourselves that the 13 colonies that got together created one entity, but they wanted to retain their individuality. And you know, what we see in, you know, part of the reason SPN got involved with this is, you know, being an organization that works on state policy, really, we wanted to highlight that, right? To remind people of the importance of that. So we hope that people are going to take away from this film that we are a country of different people and with different opinions about critical issues, and we can still find a way to get along and have conversations in civil society. The other thing we hope people take away is that this is a feature and not a bug of the American system. And if we can start having these civil, productive conversations and working towards creating solutions versus choosing sides, we're all going to feel a lot better about it. You know, it's a film. It's about 73 minutes of film. So we recognize that we couldn't solve everything. That would be a much longer film. I said to somebody the other day, I was like, we were making a film. We weren't making Roots. It wasn't going to be a massive epic. However, we hope that what we can do is we can inspire and remind people that, you know, those individual differences can exist alongside our shared sense of identities and purpose. We hope that it, yeah.
You're going to be screening this now across different parts of the country and then making it available. Yeah. And people can go to undivideus.com to be able to look at where screenings will be coming up.
Exactly. So if they go to Undivide Us, we're just in the process of wrapping the film. So we're doing a few screenings just to get some audience feedback, but we are starting to take requests for screening opportunities. So please go to the website and check it out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to come back and talk more about that with you, Carrie, and how State Policy Network working across the states, how that matters. I want to quickly, Dee Allsop, who's our co-CEO and co-founder at Heart+Mind Strategies. You obviously, Dee, you were in the trailer. I mean, look at that. You were right there talking.
Movie star.
Yeah. The method that you deployed in there, why that method, and what are some of the quickly thoughts you have around how that actually helps people with practical discussion?
First, thanks for hosting this, Maury, today, and for Riaz and Tami and Carrie for joining us. We really value all that you're doing. Like a lot of good things, they're born out of failure. And we had several years ago a client who came to us and had a really sensitive and divisive political issue they wanted advice on. And we used our traditional tools of bringing in a group of Americans, a mix of them, and trying to have conversations. And time after time, we'd find that a few people who had really strong and fixed opinions shut everybody else down. And we weren't learning anything. And we spent a lot of money of this good friend and client's money. And I said, this is not working. We have to do something different. And so we started having different conversations in which we intentionally excluded the 1 in 5, of which we've done a lot of research. It's about 1 in 5 Americans who it's their way or the highway. So we started excluding them from the conversation and then getting an equal number would lean this way, an equal number lean that way, and an equal number in the middle. That's this has a wonky name, this tool. It's called Triadic Illumination. 3 perspectives of light, one this way, one that way, and one that way, coming together. And then the other thing we did that was very novel is that rather than having people say, here's my position, and then defend it, we had them say, okay, well, we actually started using marriage counseling therapy approaches. We'd say, Bob, tell me why you think Mary believes what she does. Mary, can you tell me what Bob got right and what you would like him to understand that he doesn't quite get? And then we do all this role reversal over, and it just created a whole different dynamic. Conversations were completely different. People saw each other as humans, they valued them, they understood their position better, and understanding their position better, they could find more easily common ground and greater clarity about where the solutions came from. And it's just been a really valuable tool for us now for a lot of different projects that we work on.
That's awesome. And that method, Dee, was leveraged throughout the course of the film, I believe, in terms of one of
That's where we did a project with Carrie. She saw that and then said, hey, this might be an interesting thing to kind of see if we can actually pull off these conversations on the most controversial topics in our society. And that's kind of what we did there. And that was a lot of fun.
And Carrie, before we close this, what are the topics that you did take on in the 73 minutes so people can be thinking about the fact of what they like?
Yeah. No, so, well, first of all, can I just say thank you to the Heart and Mind team for this. This film would not have been possible without them. So Dee, it wasn't just Dee, it was Jacqueline Crawford, Brittany Lucas, and I think Tyler Ballard was, I think I got everybody, but I know there were a lot of folks who chipped in over at Heart and Mind. The issues we covered were really, we knew we had to take on the controversial issues. So we went, we were in Atlanta talking about policing the weekend that the Memphis police tape beatings came out. We talked about immigration in Arizona. We talked about gun control in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We talked about abortion. We talked about parental involvement in classrooms. So we were taking on some of the most contentious issues that we've been dealing with as a country.
Well, I strongly encourage everyone to be able to leverage that. This film in and of itself can be an inspiration and see practical ways those conversations happens. I want to shift now, and Carrie, we're going to come back to some Q&A. I have about 20 minutes at the end to kind of talk about this in more detail. But I want to bring in a recent but very good friend that I feel like a brother to now, Riaz Patel. So Riaz, you saw in that data that I'd shared from our tracking studies that people are feeling isolated, not feeling as connected. A part of this is the dialogue piece, but part of it is this stuff, right? And the screens that we have. Now, when I came across what you're doing with ConnectEffect, it just was so exciting. Talk about how you've taken your background in media and entertainment and your passion in people and making things, that do things that make a difference, and how you've created ConnectEffect. And everyone pay attention to this, because this is where you can now start put into play in local places ways to engage with pretty good sized groups in a way to help them connect in ways that might have surprised them.
Yeah, my background was psychology. I studied at Penn with some of the greatest minds in psychology and did research, and then through a life turn ended up in entertainment, because I really believed in the transformative power of entertainment to really, I think in an era of so much information that people are a little resistant to being taught, but they're okay if it's caught. And that's what entertainment does. It goes in a different way and it permeates. And so for 25 years, I've been in LA creating what are called transformative shows. So shows with Super Nanny, with women in body dysmorphia, with families in crisis, where there's an authentic transformation and the cameras just capture that. And that was sort of what I realized, that I think so many times the solutions to our problems come from these out-of-the-box solutions. So about 10 years ago, I started applying these entertainment solutions to real-world problems, working with a domestic violence shelter here to create these internal, external makeovers for women to help draw a line in the sand with trauma, have been traveling back and forth to Saudi Arabia, creating these entertaining workshops for women who are entering the workforce to be able to develop a life vision for themselves for the first time. And so I'll share my screen. The problem that really I've been focusing on for about 8 years now is the one that we were just talking about, is these screens, these damn screens that we see. Everything we know about the world comes from the screen. We work through screens, we buy through screens, we learn about the world through screens. And a screen can give you unbelievable contact. It can never give you human connection. And so the more that we lean into these screens, the more we're in this epidemic of isolation, where 1 in 4 feel like they have no one to talk to, and 1 in 2 feel alone most of the time. Those are stats from the Surgeon General. And that isolation through screens is the root cause of so many of our problems that we're having, which we're discussing here. It's the hyperpolarization and the breakdown of tolerance, addiction, so many things that we experience in the world we're only experiencing virtually through screens. And the Surgeon General recently came out and said that loneliness is the next great health crisis. And so this became something that my team and I got obsessed with, is we're producers in reality. Could we bring people together and watch them again and again and see if we could come up with a secret formula to create connection? And so the result is a company called ConnectEffect. We're at the intersection of entertainment and mental health because creating connection, there's an art and a science to it. It's not just a science, otherwise we'd solve it. There's an art to it. And so what we've done, 8 years of bringing people together, is the secret we came up, having brought people together again and again. The secret to connection is in the introduction. We found that how you introduce people to each other will set up how they see each other. And so when we discovered that, we worked for many years on what we call the ConnectEffect experience. It's a 60-minute entertainment experience. It's a show. It feels a bit like interactive theater, but it is designed to be entertaining. And the thing about our intervention is that it uses the power of entertainment, that it permeates a little bit deeper than a lot of deliberate debates do. A lot of conversations go through the brain and ego. In an information age, connection is not remotely information-based, that it's actionable, it's scalable, it's sustainable. It can take place in 15 locations at the same time. So it is scalable, that it's an experiential shift, getting people to leave the screen world and back into the real world. That's what we're trying to do. And because it's entertainment, it's a lower barrier for entry. We find that people will show up because it's a show rather than a talk or a deliberative debate. So I'll show you a tape of what it is and then a little bit more about it.
In a world increasingly divided by screens, human interaction is disappearing, and we're all struggling to connect.
People share all kind of wonderful things on Facebook and Instagram, but they don't talk about the struggles that they're going through.
Screens and just like online social media, video games or whatnot, it's like that's our whole world. You don't really feel like you're connected to other folks.
Get ready for an entertainment experience like no other. An artfully crafted journey that guides a group of total strangers away from the screen world and into deep, meaningful connection with one another in the real world. Every moment of this interactive theater show has been creatively designed to spark new connections and conversations, enjoyably and effortlessly.
I was kind of dazzled by the design and the simplicity of it. It was very powerful.
I can connect with people on a personal basis, face to face.
There is always opportunity for us to talk.
From the moment you arrive, the guided experience begins. You are randomly assigned a color.
Please press to connect.
And that color, along with our individualized connection kits, will take you on a dynamic, personalized journey.
3 of you have a blue quote bubble. Would you please look and see which 3 of you have it?
Every step is guided by our team of trained interconnectors.
It was like a calming experience to meet people in a way that wasn't in an anxious way.
It doesn't feel forced or like you're being pulled to do it.
In about 60 minutes, you will connect across divides, backgrounds, generations, beliefs.
I just think that was one of the most amazing things that I've been to.
The connections are a chain reaction. Like you meet people and then they meet people.
I was able to share things with strangers that I've never been able to share with other people.
You're actually meeting people, you're knowing about their lives, and you're finding like these commonalities that you didn't even realize.
It was also like a very joyful exercise, just getting to connect with people in a very quick amount of time.
I don't know that I was expecting it to be as life-changing as it was, you know?
I think it was wonderful.
I think it's awesome.
What I felt like was, I don't want this to end.
The experience was developed and tested for over 7 years by an award-winning creative team with over $50 million of entertainment credits.
Each of you are the solutions to each other. And all I'm doing is creating the forum for it.
Experience the ConnectEffect for yourself.
I would absolutely recommend it. I'd highly recommend it.
Definitely recommend it to everybody, but I think especially younger folks.
I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. That was really an important experience for me, and it would be an important experience for others.
So there are 3 phases to how we're rolling this out. The first is delivering it on-site to what we call communities that need connection, colleges, campuses, corporations with work from home who've lost connection, conferences. The second is building connection hubs, places where people can go to drop in on connection and conversation. And the third is this ConnectEffect TV, where we take that connection between strangers and create shows showing connection rather than conflict. So the first one is we delivered. We've been doing this. We're out to thousands of people already. And so a Roman site is set up very specifically. We bring our interconnectors, we bring our connection kits, and then we leave behind an app where people can sit on the tablet sits on a table and guides for people in conversation long after we're gone. It's just a way for people to connect and talk device free. The second is creating a destination for what's called social fitness. Harvard researchers come out and said that social fitness is as important as physical fitness. And there are a million gyms around me in LA, and there's not one place to go and meet strangers. And so the idea is that you would go to these connection hubs, and our business model uses underutilized real estate. We're meeting with Westfield malls to say, let us use your empty spaces to create connection and revitalize foot traffic in your spaces. From the moment you arrive and you touch the door, it's a very proactive process. People are very reluctant to put themselves out there. You're very much guided. Again, we're an entertainment company. We will take care of you from the moment your hand touches the door, and you're brought into spaces like this, where it's this hub for connection, conversation, and community. Our trained interconnectors are the center of each bar. They make the introductions. They do the heavy lifting. They are the ones who are constantly showing people the connections between each other. And then step 3 is on the other side of our build out behind plain glass is our studio. And so that's phase 3 is ConnectEffect TV, where we take ordinary people who are connected once a day and we tape shows with them. Because right now we know the screens, ad sales and algorithms and anger only show you conflict, which is why the world looks like a dumpster fire. But the rest of the world is mostly in the middle. And so we tape different shows of different lengths every day that offer hope. Talk shows, news shows, game shows that show people from their screens hope and connection. And that's the bigger swing here, is that we're trying to create places where people can go. We're soaking up PTAs that don't talk anymore and communities that stop talking and families that stop talking, connect them, and then beam out programming of people who look like them and sound like them, talking about regional issues, focusing on regional problems that they can solve. And that's our bigger swing, is that we will really try to master the kind of connection that leads to conversation that is the foundation of community. And what we want in time is the largest non-faith-based community, because all it takes is an open mind. And Forbes said if we want to build bridges across these unnecessary divides, we have a proven blueprint of where to start. That's sort of our vision.
I love it. I love the practical ways of bringing it in, those exercises that are being experienced. And I'd encourage those in our audience, thoughts and questions you have, because I'm going to come back to Carrie and Riaz and then with Tami and ask some questions at the end. And I want to shift now, because some of the things you saw there that Riaz was talking about is actual conversations and experiences that open you up. And I want to bring Tami Pyfer into the conversation now before we bring all three of you to ask some questions on this. Tami, you've been involved in politics and education, the nice non-conflict orientation of school board policies and so forth. You've also been in the governor's office in the state of Utah. But then recently you got involved in something that's really game-changing and very practical, because after people engage like this in something like they watch a movie that Carrie saw and they get ideas, they maybe have participated, ConnectEffect that Riaz had, but how do they continue to move forward and have conversations that lift people up? Talk to us about the dignity effect and what you've been doing there.
Thank you, Mari, and thank you, Dee, for this opportunity. I was thinking of this as I was watching the clips from Carrie and Riaz, and these people that have this experience. What do they do next? How can they carry that on? How can they spread? And like Carrie's experience in 2020, I was in the governor's office in 2020 as the education policy advisor for the state. Not good times. We went from, my background is in education. I served on the state school board. I was a local elected official at a city council level. But we went from seeing teachers as heroes, in March and April, because they pivoted so quickly from in-class instruction to online. In Utah, we closed schools on a Thursday, and on Monday, the following Monday, we had online instruction, and there were little parades for teachers, and the public was just coming together to support them in incredible ways. And then within a few months in the fall, teachers were public enemy number one, and school boards were involved in that too. Carrie, I witnessed several experiences like you described. It was very disheartening. So during this last year of my the governor I served with during his last years of his term, I began volunteering with this organization called Unite, who was looking at ways to solve these toxic political and cultural divides. And we leaned into the polarization, as Carrie described, and we agree that the problem isn't so much the differences that we have of opinion or the polarization, but it's the contempt that underlies the polarization and the toxic polarization. We believe, as Arthur Brooks has said, if we want to solve polarization, we need to solve the contempt problem. So we leaned into the work of Arthur Brooks and another colleague, Dr. Donna Hicks, who is an international conflict resolution specialist, solving the most difficult entrenched problems across the world. And her secret weapon is dignity. And we learned a lot from Donna and designed this project to be tested in a political sense, but it turned into much more than a political tool. So I want to, Mari, if you'll show our short summary of our project, and then I've just got a couple of comments after that.
Absolutely.
Careless, reckless.
The radical leftist.
Another tax break.
This month, a national movement to encourage voters and politicos to reject contempt and reward dignity launched a pilot project here in Utah.
The project is simply called the Dignity Index.
The first ever Dignity Index was released today, scoring the messages from Utah's political candidates.
Based on the research of specialists in conflict resolution, the social impact initiative Unite designed a 1 to 8 scale to measure speech for dignity or contempt. The lower the number, the more contemptuous and divisive the language.
What we've found is that people are starving for a break from the contempt and hatred and divisiveness. And let's also be clear, the stakes here are high.
We have divisions that are not caused by disagreement. They're not caused because we think differently. They're caused because we have contempt.
Contempt actually kills curiosity.
Contempt takes away our ability to talk to each other, which takes away our ability to solve problems together, which can take away our ability to hold our democracy together.
This is not a score of how nice people are necessarily.
That's right. This is not about speech police. This is not about kumbaya group hugs. This is about how we speak in terms of elevating the conversation to something a little bit different.
There's really important efforts to change hearts and minds and have public discussions. But what I like about this is it focuses on behaviors, and behaviors are changeable.
To change behavior, you have to be able to define the behavior, and then you have to measure the behavior.
And so we've trained a group of ideologically diverse coders, liberals and conservatives, working together.
Looking at campaign letters, debate transcripts, speeches, social media accounts, and trying to quantify, is this speech dignified or not?
Hi, my name is Stephen Lemhoff.
Iridacunda Esperance. Madeline Jones. Susie Estrada, and I am a student at the University of Utah.
In the training, what was really heartening to see is that we could get a lot of agreement across this broad ideological spectrum.
The great thing about it is everyone can understand it because it's really just about how we treat each other.
My thoughts about political dialogue have changed through this experience, internalizing that dialogue as a tool.
If you could just read the index, it makes you think about, well, what's a more inclusive way to say this and a more inclusive way to say that.
And I think one of the most important parts of the Dignity Index is not what it's telling us about our politicians, it's about what it will tell us about ourselves.
It's funny that we designed something as a grading tool, but what it's turned out to be most powerful as is a mirror.
And this changed the way I've had conversations with my children, with my neighbor, with my colleagues at work.
The Dignity Index changed me. And yes, you can challenge the scoring, but that inspires a conversation.
Any problem of the whole is going to require the whole. We're trying to not just open the door to civility and dignity, but open the door to the freedom to express oneself so that we can actually integrate the best of each other.
Think if we had a Congress that could talk to each other, that could actually solve problems. And part of the Dignity Index goal is to develop these types of relationships in disagreement to where we can solve problems.
When we learn how to communicate in our entire community, we're better off.
We're talking about a practical strategy for actually moving the country forward.
Those that don't know the Dignity Index should definitely explore it and get to know what it is.
The Dignity Index is our attempt to introduce to families, to businesses, and to politics a new way of solving problems by not treating others with hatred and contempt, but rather by treating others with dignity.
So I want to give you, Mari, if you'll pull up our index slide, I'm going to give you the 2-minute version of training on the Dignity Index. The index is a scale from 1 to 8. We rate speech. We don't rate people, we rate speech. And I have to remind myself of that all the time, because on any given day, we could fall on the low end of the scale, on the high end of the scale, depending on who we're speaking with, what the subject is. But we rate political speech on this scale of 1 to 8. The bottom 4 parts of the scale are the contempt side of the scale. And the top 4 are the dignity side of the scale. What we're hoping to do is come up with this common language and this common metric, so that when we hear these types of phrases, we recognize them. I think all of us would agree that contempt is a bad thing, but what does that look like? My background is in special education. How do you define that? That's what you have to do before you change behavior. So if you start at the bottom of the scale, language that calls people subhuman, not human, calling for violence, that's a 1. That's as low as you get on the scale. This is the Rwandan genocide. This is the Holocaust. These people are not even human. It's our moral duty to destroy them before they destroy us. 2, just 1 step above that, is those people are evil. And they're going to ruin our country if we let them. Now, I have to tell you, if you're like me and you get fundraising emails from both parties, both Democrat and Republican, I get 2 or 3 a week in my inbox. This is very common language in those fundraising emails, political fundraising emails. Those people are going to destroy our country if we let them. That's a 2. That's the second lowest you can be on the dignity scale. 3 is we're the good people and they're the bad people. It's us versus them. I read one fundraising piece that basically listed all of the good things that were happening, and it was because of this party, and all of the bad things that were happening, and it was because of that other party. That's a 3. 4, this is just the beginning descent into the contempt side of the scale, is we're better than those people. They don't really belong. They're not one of us. What I love about what Riaz was saying about his program is we are finding ways to connect. Because when we feel disconnected, we start to use this language. Those people don't really belong. They're different than we are. We're better than they are. So that's a 4. That's the first step into contempt. Now, on the happy side of the scale, 5 is when you start to realize these are the mindsets. It's like the other side has a right to be here, and they have a right to be heard. It's their country too. 1 step better than that, if you're at a 6, you're saying, we always talk to the other side, because I'm going to look for those things that we agree on and build from there. I'm going to find those values that we share, and then I'm going to build from there. Good politicians, good policymakers do this. When you're at a 7, you're not just looking for the things you agree on. I want to find those things we disagree on. And I want to talk about those. I want to find out why you feel so differently than I do. And this new language we added to 7 that I love. It's that we are open to admitting mistakes or changing our minds. Talk about the death knell for a politician, right? Admitting a mistake or changing our minds. And yet that's essential to good governing. It's essential to good policy. It's essential to good relationships in communities. Tell me more about you, because I might change my mind. And then number 8, it's just that each one of us is born with inherent worth. And so we treat everyone with dignity, no matter what. We've done a lot of reading on Desmond Tutu and his approach. And he's got this beautiful quote that says that, I've looked into the eyes of child soldiers who have committed the most nauseating acts of depravity. And I see in them a little piece of myself. And that's we call the divine quality that we all have, which is why each one of us deserves dignity. We deserve to be treated with dignity. We don't want to throw away our passion, our political beliefs, our personal beliefs, but we want to talk with people in a different way. And that's the goal of the Dignity Index, is to teach people what that language looks like, and then to give them ideas and tools on how they can speak about our most difficult problems in a different way.
And I love, Tami, that the obvious political application when people are going to be talking about their positioning, that there's a way that's leveraged. But one of the things that you'd shared is, and I heard it in this video again, is that the surprise that some people have of when they're trained on that the application to all of their communication with people makes a difference. And also going this way starts to become almost a self-policing or a self-evaluation. How did you see that emerge?
So when we, you know, early on, Tom Roschert, my colleague Tom Roschert, and my colleague Tim Shriver, we had these goals and visions for the project last summer before we launched the demonstration project, and we were hoping that people would take this to heart and change their own behaviors as they saw, you know, the scale and the language, what that looked like. But we knew that if we tested it in politics, it would probably make more sense to people. So in our very initial training with these undergraduate and graduate students, and even some of the researchers that we were training, day 2, they came back to the training and said, one of the researchers said, I went to the play last night, To Kill a Mockingbird, and I could not stop thinking about the Dignity Index. Every scene, every line, I was scoring. That's a 3, that's a 7. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they offered that person an 8. And the students came back and said, I had to take off a post that I put on social media yesterday. I treated someone differently on the road on my way home because I thought, ooh, that's a 3 behavior. They're not the bad people. I'm not the good people. I need to change the way I think about things. And every presentation we made beginning last September, October, until the present time, I will have a line of people that come up to me afterwards saying, I didn't know I was talking to my husband that way. Can you bring this into my business culture? Can you bring this into the schools? Do you have a curriculum? All are non-political applications, but they see the benefit of changing themselves and bringing that into their culture. I'll have to tell you, there's a really great quote by the Dalai Lama, because we talk about changing ourselves, and that's how we will change the culture. He said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. So changing our own behavior, and we might be just one person at a time, but if we can change our own behavior as we look towards changing others, we can make this huge difference.
I love that. I'd like to, let's bring Carrie and Riaz, Dee and Tami. Carrie, I want to ask you, as you heard what Riaz talked about with those gathering people in those sessions, and then Tami talking about this practical language tool, how did that seem similar to some of the lessons that you gained through the process of creating this film and going through this exercise and the journey you told us about? What seems similar and what seems different, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the similarity really is, something that they both talked about, which is, it's that process by which you restore humanity to the person on the other side of the table. One of my favorite interactions was in Pittsburgh. We had 2 people, one who, when we were talking about guns, and one of them, Celicia, had lost her son's father to gun violence in December. And sitting next to her was Matt, who grew up in the gun culture of Southwestern Pennsylvania. And Dee had them not talk about why was Matt in favor of guns, and didn't have Celicia talk about why she wasn't in favor of guns. He had them say, look, Matt, tell me why you think Celicia might not be in favor of guns. And Celicia, tell me why you think Matt might favor guns. And it was that process by which they had this almost cathartic discussion. We watched Celicia in the beginning, just sort of, she was very tense. She was very skeptical about the process, and watch her warm up in that discussion. And I think part of that is, a lot of what Tami's talking about, right? That that contempt kills curiosity, and curiosity leads to understanding, and we need that. And that's what we were seeing through that process.
Dee, can you talk about the feeling for you being the moderator on that? I know it's for film and everything else, but you're going through it and you're seeing this happen with these 2 people. What's that emotional journey feel like to you, observing it and asking those questions?
It's really, I love doing that and being in that position, because you come in and people sit down and you have these certain impressions that we're just almost conditioned to make, that this person looks like they're going to think and believe this. And then you ask questions and you're always surprised. It's so exciting to see that Celicia that Carrie was talking about, it was a gun owner, and yet she has really strong feelings against guns. And we didn't that came out, and Matt, I mean, just when they had this conversation, it was so beautiful. They actually did follow-up conversations offset at their homes, brought them together, and you got to see that unfold. And just it just was really a lot of fun. And it's such a powerful discovery that every time that everybody gets to this aha place, and then after we're done, they're exchanging phone numbers and addresses and contact information. They are completely different humans in terms of how they see each other, because now they see them as in a very different eyes. It's just really exciting.
And an important part I hear all of you talking about is that the individual didn't fundamentally change their core beliefs or values.
We ask the question at the end of our groups every time, how many of you changed your position on this issue? Nobody ever rose their hand on that. But yet their ability to come to a solution or an understanding of the others, everybody said that changed a lot.
Yeah, and so seeing each other as humans and then connecting that way really is that magic and the thing that we need more of. It's a shift from being self-centered to being focused on the shared humanity. Riaz, Pamela asked a question about in the workplace, and I know you've done some of these sessions at association meetings, and I think even in the workplace. Can you share an example of your thought about how connection and putting in place ConnectEffect in that setting where it made a difference? Any story you could share on that or thoughts?
Absolutely. I think in a work from home world, we've just tumbled more into the screens. And so even people that we work with every day, we have a 1.5 inch by 3.5 inch version of them. And there's no emotional currency there. And so in terms of getting employers saying, please come back to the workplace, and no one wants to come because they don't really know anybody beyond the tasks that go back and forth. And so in the workplace, we've definitely brought it in and had people actually enjoy each other. And I think that's so key, is I think when connection is the most important thing, and it's the most enjoyable thing. And people have forgotten that. And a lot of the times people are talking about we have to have tough conversations, and it makes it seem so unappealing. But if you actually sit down and you enjoy and you laugh together, that human identity is the most necessary thing for us as human beings, health and longevity, but it's fun. And we've forgotten that when you have great conversations with people and you laugh together, that's the most fun thing. And so really in workplaces, we're trying to create, again, a culture of enjoying going to work and going to the water cooler and sharing about your day. And that emotional currency with each other has been disappearing in a work from home world.
Yeah. And, when you talk about that fun and joy of talking with somebody that's different with you and having that connection, one of the greatest examples that I saw is when you went with Glenn Beck, and I think you probably couldn't find two people more different from each other, and went and had a show together and talked, and it was impromptu, spontaneous. I think you said that the terms you said is, well, there can't be someone talking in your ear, has to be us just talking, you and me. How did that change you as a person, or how did it elevate you as a person going through that exercise with Glenn Beck? And I think you did 20 shows after that with him.
We did. And I think it was very much, about humanizing the other side. And it was even less about Glenn Beck than it was that audience that would never see a Muslim, an immigrant, a gay parent in a three-dimensional form. And so it really was, you're not the edit I thought you were. And that's very key. As we always tell people, when you look at people through screens, it's not the truth, it's an edit. And behind every edit is an intention. And so I realized I had actually never had or heard a conversation with Glenn Beck. I'd just seen edits of him, and he had seen edits of people like me. And so when we segue, we move people away from screen world depiction into the real world, that's where the truth is. And I think it really had me understand the other side in a way that I still appreciate to this day. If you look in my feed, the algorithms can't pin me because I've got both sides. Things will happen and I'll see one speech go down and the best bites go to one feed and the worst bites go to the other feed, same speech. And so I really do think the solutions will be somewhere in the middle, that, you really, I did a podcast special with Glenn where we brought together people from a community after a school shooting. And it was a friendship that sparked between a woman who runs Moms Demand Action and a woman who works at the NRA. And they've been going back and forth to each other's meetings. It's the only bridge I can think of that exists, but we won't be able to solve that problem because it's not an either or problem, it's a both problem. And so I think humanizing the other side is so key.
Yeah, I love that. And Tami, you brought up on, the death knell of politicians getting up to that 7 or 8 and admitting. Marie asks in our feed here that, have you seen instances of candidates shifting after actually looking at it? We all experienced the example of John McCain before his final days, just realizing I was part of the problem, is what he said, right? But
Yeah.
how many times is that happening? Are you seeing that happen?
Well, I'm going to say not yet. During the demonstration project, we reached out to the candidates. We let them know what was happening. We had very little communication back. What we did hear informally was that they weren't very excited about it. But that was a short demonstration project. What I see as super promising is that we are now part of the Utah Governor Spencer Cox's initiative called Disagree Better.
Yeah.
And he is the chair of the National Governors Association. I worked with him in Governor Herbert's office, and we are very much involved helping with his initiative. He's working on what we call the grass tops. He's working with governors across the country, finding ways to disagree better and helping them with these tools. We're promoting the Dignity Index along with the discussions he's having. I like to look at it, my part is this grassroots. Like, until we have people at the grassroots level that stop rewarding contempt at the ballot box, on TV, on your media, until we stop getting clicks and likes for the most contemptuous people, until we do that, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting. But until we get candidates like Governor Cox is working on, until we get the politicians and the media personalities that demonstrate dignity instead of contempt, we don't have someone we can connect with. So I think both of these strategies have to come into play at the same time. Grassroots, grass tops. I think you'll be seeing more of this as we get into 2024. We will be scoring political and public speech. We do have AI that is almost finished the development to where you can plop in a paragraph of speech, and it will tell you if that piece is scoreable, and that will tell you what the score is. And we've got a tool working on, like a Grammarly application, to where I can type in a post and a box will pop up and say, did you really mean to say that? You're using a word that's very contemptuous, Tami. And it's like, oh, no, I didn't mean that. Again, part of it is we want this common vocabulary. I want that box to pop up and say, Tami, that was a 3. And I want the whole country to know what a 3 means. But I really want it to pop up and say, Tami, you're a 7 today. Good job.
That's fantastic. Well, before we close, we always like to, we're doing these sessions to try to inspire better thinking and planning in all facets of our lives, personal and professional. And we want to elevate thinking to a better place. And this topic has just been so uplifting for me. And I know that those are listening too. Before we close out, you've got people on the session that are listening live and those later from all walks of life, different sectors. They have a common thread at their organizations where they're involved in communications in some way or product development or experience. And I'd like you to each give me, I'll start with you, Tami, go Riaz and Carrie, 1 or 2 practical pieces of advice of what you would take away in a 15, 30-second tidbit of what can I do after this is over to actually make this real in my life?
Fantastic. What I would want people to do is go to our website, dignityindex.us. You can learn about the scale. We've got these cards. Sign up. You take a pledge. The pledge is pretty easy. It just says, I'm going to do better at treating people with dignity, not contempt. But then you join our mail list, and we are sending out materials and training videos and ideas that you can use to engage with people with whom you disagree. And then you're part of the movement. We need people to join this movement. And so that's what that would be my ask.
Riaz?
I would say if a group or a company or a corporation or a community center are looking to create some sort of sense of community, specifically with the isolation, we're at ConnectEffect.us. And I would say be hopeful, because really every time we do this, everyone is shocked at how much they have in common. And I think the screen will always make you think that the sky is falling. But I go through the world with radical hope, because I do see it in people every single day. And people are more similar, and that don't let that darkness permeate. Go out with radical hope.
Thank you. Carrie?
First of all, I'm going to share our website again. It's undivideusmovie.com. You can sign up for updates and even sign up to host a screening of the film. The second I would say is, be curious, not judgmental. I think that was one of the great things that was quoted within Ted Lasso, which I think was popular for many reasons during COVID, among its optimism for the human condition. So just be curious, not judgmental.
Fantastic. Well, Dee, you created an organization, our organization, Heart and Mind, that's all about championing the human and empowering choice. What's the human truth that you see through this whole conversation here to close us out?
Well, I appreciate again everybody who's participated. It wasn't long ago, then I was looking at all these macro trends going on and feeling like there's not much that can be done because these things change so slowly, like the way our primaries are conducted, the tribalization of media and redistricting all favor polarization. But what I feel very different, I love the term you used, Riaz, is radical hope or about this, and that I feel very different now that these institutional factors still are going to be slow changing, but what gives me hope is that there are a lot more people who are actually doing something about it. And as spoken by Tami and Riaz and Carrie, just 3 individuals who've made a really big difference. I love the headline that was in Politico in an article they wrote in January. It said, "One woman holding politicians accountable for nasty speech. It's changing politics." And that was about Tami. One woman can make a difference. And it's exciting for me because we haven't said it yet, and I'll say it now. Tami's my cousin, and I know her. She's a wonderful person. And it takes wonderful people like that, and you that are on this, and others who are clients, to begin doing this. And if we all begin to do this, it will begin to change the game, and we all can have radical hope that they can make that a great strength of our country rather than a anchor. So thank you all for participating today in our session.
Well, everyone, this wraps up another of our sessions of the Heart and Mind Connection series, and I leave myself feeling very inspired and radical hope flowing through the veins. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Riaz. Thank you, Tami. Thank you to other organizations. I saw Alan with American Promise working on this. There's folks at Braver Angels working on this. There's so many different folks trying to make a difference, but each one of us can make a difference. We can't set that aside as it's not our responsibility. If not you, who? And start there right now today with who you are making a difference. Everybody have a fantastic day, and thanks again for joining us. Thanks for coming each time on these. Take care.